Hey, now we are. Hey, so
Right.
I just did this dope intro and I want everyone to use their fantastical imagination to think of how dope it was and then just know it was doper than that. Um anyway, um I'll through the important points. I was really sick for a while. In fact, I was really sick the last couple of times we were recording. I feel great now. I'm very excited to do some philosophy, and I'm very excited to continue to read Herbert Marcuse's mid-century Marxist masterpiece, One Dimensional Man, um, with a conservative, critical, theoretical lens, which, as I've been saying, is not hard to do because despite the fact this is a book about how we need to have or a book that assumes we need to have a literal communist revolution in the West, it's also very much a book that argues for the preservation, the conservation, um, and the nurturing of um, classic institutions, beautiful works of art and culture like cathedrals and canon literature, three-dimensional culture, not one-dimensional culture. Um, Let me do that last little bit that I wrote down so I wouldn't forget. Last time we were talking about how rationality and pure logic had been transformed into the logic of domination. And tonight we'll be talking about the ancient Greek philosophers, their approach to intuition, and how it differs from ours for better or for worse. Um, I'm going to guess better because this is conservative Marxist philosophy. Do you gentlemen mind if I start reading?
You got it.
Awesome. All right. So in my copy of the book, which is the first printing, I'm on the bottom of page 124. It's about the second page of the chapter, and it's the paragraph that starts in classical Greek philosophy. So I'm gonna read a little bit, and we'll test my ancient Greek pronunciation. Just don't test my ancient Greek translation skills, because they're weaker. In classical Greek philosophy, reason is the cognitive faculty to distinguish what is true and what is false, insofar as truth and falsehood is primarily a condition of being, of reality, and only on this ground a property of propositions. True, discourse, logic reveals and expresses that which really is, as distinguished from that which appears to be real. And by virtue of this equation between truth and real being, truth is of value, for being is better than non being. Jacob, will interject that I firmly agree. Anyway, the latter is not simply nothing, it is a potentiality of and a threat to being destruction. The struggle for truth is a struggle against destruction and for the salvation, soxane, of being. An effort which appears itself to be destructive if it assails an established reality as untrue. Socrates against the Athenian state, for example. Inasmuch as the struggle for truth saves reality from destruction, truth commits and engages human existence. It is the essentially human project. If a man has learned to see and know what really is, he will act in accordance with truth. Epistemology is in itself ethics, and ethics is epistemology. This conception reflects the experience of a world agnostic in itself.
Is that antagonistic?
Oh, I'm sorry, antagonistic. Yeah, let me hold the book a little closer to my face. Thank you. This conception reflects the experience of a world antagonistic in itself, a world afflicted with want and negativity, constantly threatened with destruction, but also a world which is a cosmos, structured in accordance with final causes. To the extent to which the experience of an antagonistic world guides the development of the philosophical categories, philosophy moves in a universe which is broken in itself. Déchirement ontologique. Ontologically broken.
Hmm.
Ontologically detached. Uh,
I thought like detached.
yeah, ontologically detached. Uh, the fuck, I don't know French either. Two-dimensional. Appearance and reality. Untruth and truth. And, as we shall see, unfreedom and freedom are ontological conditions. The distinction is not by virtue or by fault of abstract thought. It is rather rooted in the experience of the universe of which thought partakes in theory and practice. In this universe, there are modes of being in which men and things are by themselves and as themselves, and modes in which they are not. That is, in which they exist in distortion, limitation, or denial of their nature, their essence. To overcome these negative conditions is the process of being and of thought. Philosophy originates in dialectic. Its universe of discourse responds to the facts of an antagonistic reality. What are the criteria for this distinction? On what ground is the status of truth assigned to one mode or condition rather than to another? Classical Greek philosophy relies largely on what was later termed, in a rather derogative sense, intuition, i.e., a form of cognition in which the object of thought appears clearly as that which it really is in its essential qualities, and in antagonistic relation to its contingent immediate situation. Indeed, this evidence of intuition is not too different from the Cartesian one, by which he means, I think, therefore I am. It is not a mysterious faculty of the mind, not a strange immediate experience, nor is it divorced from conceptual analysis. Intuition is rather the preliminary terminus of such an analysis, the result of methodic intellectual mediation. As such, it is the mediation of concrete experience. The notion of the essence of man may serve as an illustration. Analyzed in the condition in which he finds himself in his universe, Man seems to be in possession of certain faculties and powers which would enable him to lead a good life, i.e., a life which is as much as possible free from toil, dependence, and ugliness. Here, here, I say, Jacob, in as a fan of Skole. Um, to attain such a life, now I don't know that everyone, like for example, David McCarricker or Xenophon, would agree with that. Um, but that's another matter. To um, to attain such a life is to attain the best life, to live in accordance with the essence of nature or man. To be sure, there is still the dictum of the philosopher. It is he who analyzes the human situation. He subjects experience to his critical judgment, and this contains a value judgment, namely, that freedom from toil is preferable to toil, and an intelligent life is preferable to a stupid life. And I, Jacob, will throw quotation marks around that last one. Um, let's see. It
So
so
a quote,
happened.
stupid
What
life.
what's that?
So a quote, stupid life. Is
Yeah,
that
the
what you mean?
quote unquote stupid life. The life of a farmer, for example. The life of no, maybe not even a farmer, the life of a farm laborer. It would be
Okay.
that to someone like Aristotle would be a stupid life, a life that doesn't require intellectual activity or effort to his understanding. And
Mm.
I would say that Xenophon, who, to my understanding, owned a lot of farms, um, and had a lot of people working on those farms and went and oversaw those farms a lot because that's where his family's money came from, had probably a very different understanding of the degree of intelligence that was required to be a successful farm laborer, the degree of creativity, the degree of philosophical know-how or gumption.
Yeah.
But Aristotle was a fucking city boy, and like one of one of the first people that we could use the term philosopher for in a derisive sense, as in shut up and grow some corn, philosopher. um
Dang, Mao was pilled.
let's see, where were we? I mean, I grew up on a farm, and we grew a lot of corn, and we ate corn almost every day on that farm. Anyway, where were we?
To be sure.
Thank you, thank you. To be sure, this is still the dictum of the philosopher. It is he who analyzes the human situation. He subjects experience to his critical judgment, and this contains a value judgment, namely, that freedom from toil is preferable to toil, and that an intelligent life is preferable to a stupid life. It so happened that philosophy was born with these values. Scientific thought had to break this union of value judgment and analysis, for it became increasingly clear that the philosophic values did not guide the organization of society nor the transformation of nature. They were ineffective, unreal. Already, the Greek conception contains the historical element. The essence of man is different in the slave and in the free citizen, in the Greek and in the barbarian. Civilization has overcome the ontological stabilization of this difference, at least in theory. But this development does not yet invalidate the distinction between essential and contingent nature, between true and false modes of existence, provided only that the distinction derives from a logical analysis of the empirical situation and understands its potential as well as its contingency. um, which I think is his way of saying that our society allows you, and remember he's writing this in the early 60s, our society allows you to be racist as long as you can be scientific about it, as long as you can be, as long as you can be so in a rational, and I would say even a polite way. um
Yeah.
as long as you recognize that there's a contingent element at play. um I've said before that barbarian's probably the first ethnic slur, um, because it mocks the way non-Greeks talk. Um, the Greeks, yeah. Here's a little Zizek'ian lesson in racism. But like, if you guys didn't know, like the Greeks called like people like the Persians, they called them barbarians because they said like, oh, when a Persian talks to you, it's all bar 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 bar. So they were the barbarians. They were the barbar people.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it
Uh,
stuck. But also, like, this is the first, I do want to say racial distinction, although that's not the way they would think of it. This is the first distinction in the West, the distinction between Greek and barbarian, which means Greek and everyone else, is the fundamental distinction from which the concept of West versus non West has grown culturally. Or at the very minimum, that the sort of philosophers who want to tie present forms of Western democracy and republicanism to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans will tell you that our project, the project of the West, starts the moment the Greeks differentiated themselves from other people.
Hmm.
Um, and that from that point on, it's continued unabated, and we'll just ignore the Dark Ages. Uh, that didn't happen. Don't ask who preserved all of this Plato and Aristotle for us when we lost them in Europe. Because it wasn't Westerners, but that's another story. Um, I'm just gonna say, those Persians thought, thank God those Persians thought that that Plato was a big deal,
Hmm.
or they wouldn't have bothered to copy it down, because they didn't just copy it down in Arabic and other languages that they spoke. They copied it down in Greek, so they made sure that the original documents were preserved. And all
Wow.
of these documents, almost all of these documents that we have, the entire ancient Greek canon comes from almost entirely from Arab scholars who copied it down in the original Greek. And that includes our math, that includes our philosophy, and that especially includes our theater. And that's why we only have 18 fucking ancient Greek plays when we know they put on 4 at a time. You'd go to the theater and be there for like 16 hours. But I mean, they didn't have TV back then. So, um,
so even all the way back then, the old people just watch TV all day.
exactly. Yeah. You just go and you just watch plays all day. Exactly. Yeah. You'd watch a trilogy of dramas in which everyone would die, and then you'd watch a comedy that would make fun of the dramas.
Oh my
And
God.
now, and now they watch like football games all day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like on a Saturday. Yeah, I mean,
We
not much has changed.
Football and
yeah.
Fox.
Well, we probably owe that to the Romans, right? Football is just our version of gladiators. Um, they even have the armor and the uniforms and shit.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
I think if look, I love gridiron football. I'm wearing a college football hat right now, but I'm just saying, if gridiron football had 2 or 3 guys on each team with spears,
It'd be
it'd be,
better.
yeah, it could be better. It could be improved. Anyway, do we have anything to say about we want to say about the ancient Greeks before we jump further into how their sense of intuition differs from ours?
Um, if I'm honest, uh, I was a bit distracted, so I don't have much to say. I'm gonna go back and read it again. Um, but yes, I apologize
No,
for
no,
my
no, no, no
lack
worries.
of focus.
Um, I've read it twice on camera now, on either end of the summer, and I'm still not sure I completely get it. But I think importantly, like, well, I mean, he's about to break it down right now. He's gonna explain it right now. So if you guys don't mind, I'll read a little further, and then maybe I'll pass the torch.
Uh,
Um,
what question?
yeah.
From what I garnered, is he just talking about how like the Greeks kind of had the concept of like the unreality of the reality and the reality not necessarily being 100% correlated to the truth?
No, I think he would say, I think he's saying that for the most part, they had the sense that it was correlated to the truth.
Ah,
That it's only later on that people start saying, hey, maybe my experiences aren't aren't like the ancient Greeks
universal.
didn't even have a concept of like free will, you know? Like they they didn't their understanding of, like, I don't think they really even understood consciousness. Like you just were, you were just Socrates, you were just Plato, and you did what you did. And whether you were choosing to do that or the gods made, honestly, they probably thought that the gods made you do it a lot, right? Um, if
Mm.
if we believe what, I don't know that we can believe that Plato believed it, um, but I know that we can believe that Plato's character of Socrates in his philosophical works believed it, or at least says he believes it. Um, because all the time he'll be like, look, the when we look at Homer with the Odyssey, we see gods making people do things, therefore gods make people do things. Which, if you think about it, is kind of philosophically hinting at the idea of an unconscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. Hey, that 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 play was written so long ago. We didn't have written language back then. Like motherfuckers just had to memorize that shit, and that's a long play. That's like a 300-page play. Um, is it anyway? But he's about to say why these ancient Greeks are wrong about that. But maybe not that wrong. We'll have to see. Um,
Okay.
to the to the Plato of the later dialogues and to Aristotle, the modes of being are modes of movement. Transition from potentiality to actuality. Realization. Finite being is incomplete. Finite being is incomplete rationalization, subject to change. Its generation is corruption. It is permeated with negativity. Thus, it is not true reality, truth. I, Jacob, just gonna interject really quickly to say, like, for our previous conversation, that's where philosophers started to say, hey, maybe there's a difference between reality and truth, or our experience of reality and truth, and what really is. The philosophic quest, and hey, and then afterwards we end up with the idea of God, capital big G God, but that's going to take a while. um the philosophic quest proceeds from the finite world to the construction of a reality which is not subject to the painful difference between potentiality and actuality, which has mastered its negativity and is complete and independent in itself, free. This discovery is the work of Logos and eros. Um, the two key terms designate two modes of negation. Erotic as what let's see, erotic as well as logical cognition break the hold of the established contingent reality and strive for a truth incompatible with it. Logos and eros are subjective and objective in one. The ascent from the lower to the higher form of reality is movement of matter as well as minds. According to Aristotle, the perfect reality, the God, attracts the world below os horomenon. He is the final cause of all being. Jacob, I'm going to interject the phrase that Aristotle uses is he's the prime mover. Anyway, logos and eros are in themselves the unity of the positive and the negative, creation and destruction. In the exegenesis of thought and in the madness of love is the destructive refusal of the established ways of life. Truth transforms the modes of thought and existence. Reason and freedom converge. However, this dynamic has its inherent limits insofar as the antagonistic character of reality, its explosion in true and untrue modes of existence, appears to be an immutable ontological condition. There are modes of existence which can never be true because they can never rest in the realization of their potentiality. Excuse me. This is a dope line. I'm sorry I'm messing it up. There are modes of existence which can never be true because they can never rest in the realization of their potentialities, in the joy of being. Like, for example, the mode of existence where the three of us are unicorns and fly through space fighting giant robots is never going to happen. That mode of existence will never have the joy of being. And that's sad, maybe. I guess it depends on whether we can breathe in space or not. Um, in the human reality, all existence that spends itself in procuring the prerequisites of existence is thus an untrue and unfree existence. Obviously, this reflects the not at all ontological condition of a society based on the proposition that freedom is incompatible with the activity of procuring the necessities of life, that this activity is the natural function of a specific class, and that cognition of the truth and true existence imply freedom from the entire dimension of such activity. This is indeed the pre and anti technological constellation par excellence. But the real dividing line between pre technological and technological rationality is not that between a society based on unfreedom and one based on freedom. Society is still organized in such a way that procuring the necessities of life constitutes the full-time and lifelong occupation of specific social classes, which are therefore unfree and prevented from a human existence. In this sense, the classical proposition, according to which truth is incompatible with enslavement by socially necessarily labor, is still valid. Um, I'm just gonna say, for those of you who haven't read Aristotle, one of his quick interjection, one of his concepts I struggled with the most as a young working class philosophy student was his assertion that people who worked for a living, um, they um, they couldn't know the truth of anything because they had to work all the time and they couldn't spend their free time studying. They didn't have schole to study and learn and reason through stuff. No free time, no time to study. And so that led Aristotle to say, and this is the line from the Nicomachean Ethics, I think. Um, he said that only the wealthy are capable of being good people, and I was like, oh, fuck that. Um, but I can understand philosophically more now. I can respect philosophically more now the point he was trying to make. But again, I'm not convinced, and I don't think Marcuse is convinced that um, a life free of toil is necessarily intellectually superior to one in which there is a lot of toil. Um, but let's see, where was I? Who is, in the classical conception, the subject that comprehends the ontological condition of truth and untruth?
I believe you skipped
Oh,
a
did I?
section. So
Oh, I'm
above,
sorry.
it's the classical concept
Oh,
implies.
I'm so sorry. The classical concept implies the proposition that freedom of thought and speech must remain a class privilege as long as this enslavement prevails. Basically, that's what we just were discussing. For thought and speech are of a thinking and speaking subject. And if the life of the latter depends on the performance of a superimposed function, it depends on fulfilling the requirements of this function. Thus, it depends on those who control these requirements. The dividing line between the pre technological and the technological project, rather, is in the manner in which the subordination to the necessities of life, to quote unquote earning a living, is organized, and in the new modes of freedom and unfreedom, truth and falsehood, which correspond to this organization. Um, Picking this back up, who is in the classical conception? Maybe I'll read a couple more paragraphs and then pass the mic. Um, who is in the classical conception the subject that comprehends the ontological condition of truth and untruth? It is the master of pure contemplation, theoria. Um, Here's a fun, sorry to keep stopping us, but here's a question. In the copy you guys have, is theoria in English or is it in Greek?
It looks English.
English
Yeah.
because it
Yeah, so
was
for
that's
some
also
reason he's usually putting these, I mean it's an ancient Greek word, but he sticks it in English for some reason.
Hmm.
Um anyway, who knows? Maybe he has a purpose. Um
it's a slip.
what's that?
Maybe it's like a slip. He meant to write it in. They just
Yeah,
accidentally.
maybe he wrote them all in English, and then as he was editing it, was converting them to ancient Greek, like looking up what the ancient Greek was. It could be the other way too. I don't know. Or he could have just decided, hey, more important to do it in English. Theoria is a pretty important word for critical theory, right? Um, the whole contemplation is what critical theory is. Um, and the master of a practice guided by theoria, i.e., the philosopher statesman, hell yeah. To be sure, the truth which he knows and expounds is potentially accessible to everyone. This is important, Jacob says. Led by the philosopher, the slave in Plato's Meno is capable of grasping the truth of a geometrical axiom, i.e., a truth beyond change and corruption. But since truth is a state of being as well as of thought, and since the latter is the expression and manifestation of the former, access to truth remains mere potentiality as long as it is not living in and with the truth.
Hmm.
And this mode of existence is closed to the slave and to anyone who has to spend his life procuring the necessities of life. Consequently, if men no longer had to spend their lives in the realm of necessity, truth and a true human existence would be, in a strict and real sense, universal. Philosophy envisages the equality of man, but at the same time, it submits to the factual denial of equality. For in the given reality, procurement of the necessities is the lifelong job of the majority, and the necessities have to be procured and served so that truth, which is a freedom from material necessities, can be. Here, the historical barrier attests and distorts the quest for truth. The societal division of labor obtains the dignity of an ontological condition. If truth presupposes freedom from toil, and if this freedom is, in the social reality, the prerogative of a minority, then the reality allows such a truth only in approximation and for a privileged group. Jacob would interject, the non slaves. And I'd say, even in our world, some of the non slaves at best,
No,
slave owners.
no, wait. Counter argument.
Sure,
We
hit
have
me.
like we have like the Marxist maybe misinterpretation of the Marxist where it's like the true consciousness of the world and it's
Mm-hmm.
the worker. So that's like a complete inversion where it's like the one that's actually working knows the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Versus the one who is able to sit on his porch and watch his slaves work his farm while he contemplates
The higher forms.
yeah, or even economicus, to bring it back to Xenophon. Um like
Yeah.
yeah, like all of those dudes who were developing economics in Xenophon's case, or history in um oh shit, who wrote the Historia, Herodotus's case, yeah. um those those guys all had lots of slaves doing lots of work, making lots of money for them. And the reality is, like, as Plato demonstrates in the Meno, any one of those slaves can do fucking algebra. um they
Mhm.
wouldn't have called it algebra at the time, but any one of those slaves can do algebra. But what he needs is someone to teach him how to do algebra and then have the time to do it. Um,
Yep.
and that is a very, very clear distinction. If 10% of the population gets to spend their time practicing war and honing their bodies and their minds, getting good at battle and um, philosophy, and the rest of us destroy our bodies working in factories, like, who is the better person? Like, who
Yeah.
is better, you know? um
And
it's
then
almost like we need some kind of philosopher to come along and say, blessed are the meek. um but
unique.
um let's see, let's see, I was in the middle of this paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah. This state of affairs contradicts the universal character of truth, which defines and prescribes not only a theoretical goal, but the best life of man qua man with respect to the essence of man. For philosophy, the contradiction is insoluble, or else it does not appear as a contradiction because it is the structure of the slave or serf society which this philosophy does not transcend. Thus, it leaves history behind, unmastered, and elevates truth safely above the historical reality. There, truth is preserved intact, not as an achievement of heaven or in heaven, but as an achievement of thought, intact because its very notion expresses the insight that those who devote their lives to earning a living are incapable of living a human existence. Well, and that's some heavy shit. Would one of you folks be willing to um take over reading for a little bit?
I can do it.
Awesome. I would appreciate that. Oh, before you dive in, I apologize. It's 9:45. What do your guys' timelines look like?
I mean,
I probably do the next 15 minutes till 10.
Okay.
don't know if you can see in the back, but the sun, so I'm kind of chilling. Freaking code. That's
Chill.
not.
Is it morning where you are?
It's like maybe 150.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, not bad. Um, well, I'll tell you what. Since we only have fuck it. Um, Alex, I'd love it if you take a shot at this Aristotle versus Husserl, um, which I don't think is actually that hard of a section. It just involves you saying a bunch of letters.
Okay. I can try speaking as to give emphasis where it's needed, hopefully.
Yeah, and I'll just cut you. Well, I'll let us know when we're pushing 10 p.m.
Sweet.
Awesome.
The ontological concept of truth is in the center of a logic which may serve as a model of pre-technological rationality. It is the rationality of a two-dimensional universe of discourse which contrasts with the one-dimensional modes of thought and behavior that develop in the execution of the technological project. Aristotle uses the term apophatic apophantic
Yeah, sure. Apophantic.
apophantic logos in order to distinguish a specific type of logos, speech communication, that which discovers truth and falsehood and is, in its development, determined by the difference between truth and falsehood. It is the logic of judgment, but in the emphatic sense of a judicial sentence, attributing P to S because and in as far as it pertains to S as a property of S, or denying P to S because and in as far as it does not pertain to S, etc. From this ontological basis, the Aristotelian philosophy proceeds to establish the quote pure forms of all possible true and false predications. It becomes the formal logic of judgments. When Husserl revived the idea of an apophantic logic, he emphasized its original critical intent. And he found this intent precisely in the idea of a logic of judgments. That is, in the fact that thought was not directly concerned with being, but rather with, quote, pretensions, propositions on being. Husserl sees in this orientation on judgments a restriction and a prejudice with respect to the task and scope of logic. The classical idea of logic shows indeed an ontological prejudice. The structure of the judgment proposition refers to a divided reality. The discourse moves between the experience of being and non being, essence and fact, generation and corruption, potentiality and actuality. The Aristotelian organon abstracts from this unity of opposites the general forms of propositions and of their correct or incorrect connections. Still, decisive parts of this formal logic remain committed to Aristotelian metaphysics. Prior to this formalization, the experience of the divided world finds its logic in the Platonic dialect. Here the terms, quote, being, non-being, movement, the one and the many, identity, and contradiction are methodic, methodically, methodically, there we
Methodically.
go, are methodically kept open, ambiguous, not fully defined. They have an open horizon, an entire universe of meaning which is gradually structured in the process of communication itself, but which is never closed. The propositions are submitted, developed, and tested in a dialogue, in which the partner is led to question the normally unquestioned universe of experience and speech, and to enter a new dimension of discourse. Otherwise, he is free, and the discourse is addressed to his freedom. He is supposed to go beyond that which is given to him, as the speaker, in his proposition, goes beyond the initial setting of the terms. These terms have many meanings because the conditions to which they refer have many sides, implications, and effects which cannot be insulated and stabilized. Their logical development responds to the process of reality, or sachet selbst.
Sure.
The laws of thought are laws of reality, or rather become the laws of reality, if thought understands the truth of immediate experience as the appearance of another truth, which is that of the true forms of reality, of the ideas. Thus, there is contradiction rather than correspondence between dialectical thought and the given reality. The true judgment judges this reality not in its own terms, but in terms which envisage its subversion. And in this subversion, reality comes into its own truth. In the classical logic, the judgment, which constituted the original core of dialectical thought, was formalized in the propositional form, quote, S is P, end quote. But this form conceals rather than reveals the basic dialectical proposition, which states the negative character of the empirical reality. judged in the light of their essence and idea. Men and things exist as other than they are. Subsequently, thought contradicts that which is given, opposes its truth to that of the given reality. The truth envisaged by thought is the idea.
Hmm.
As such, it is, in terms of the given reality, quote, mere idea, quote, mere essence, potentiality. But the essential potentiality is not like the many possibilities which are contained in the given universe of discourse and action. The essential potentiality is of a very different order. Its realization involves subversion of the established order. For thinking in accordance with truth is the commitment to exist in accordance with truth. In Plato, the extreme concepts which illustrate this subversion are death as the beginning of the philosopher's life and the violent liberation from the cave. Thus, the subversive character of truth inflicts upon thought an imperative quality. Logic centers on judgments which are, as demonstrative propositions, imperatives. The predicate is implies an ought.
Hmm.
This contradictory two-dimensional style of thought is the inner form not only of dialectical logic, but of all philosophy, which comes to grips with reality. The propositions which define reality affirm as true something that is not immediately the case. Thus, they contradict that which is the case, and they deny its truth. The affirmative judgment contains a negation which disappears in the propositional form, S is P. For example, quote, virtue is knowledge. Justice is that state in which everyone performs the function for which his nature is best suited. The perfectly real is the perfectly knowable. Verum est id quod est. Man is free. The state is the reality of reason.
Hmm.
If these propositions are to be true, then the copula is states an ought, a desideratum. It judges conditions in which virtue is not knowledge, in which men do not perform the function for which their nature best suits them, in which they are not free, etc. Or the categorical S2P?
Sure.
S
Yeah.
to P form states that S is not S. S is defined as other than itself.
Hmm.
Verification of the proposition involves a process in fact as well as in thought. S must become that which it is. The categorical statement thus turns into a categorical imperative. It does not state a fact, but the necessity to bring about a fact. For example, it could be read as follows: man is not, in fact, free, endowed with inalienable rights, etc. But he ought to be, because he is free in the eyes of God, by nature, etc.
Hell yeah. You it looks like we got 3 minutes left on the clock. Are you willing to tackle that teeny tiny note on the bottom? That teeny tiny font, otherwise pretty big note
But
on the
no,
bottom?
Yeah, that connects to what I just read. So
Yeah,
we'll
please.
do that. But why does the proposition say ought if it means ought? Why does the negation disappear in the affirmation? Did the metaphysical origins of logic perhaps determine the propositional form? Pre-Socratic, as well as Socratic thought, predates the separation of logic from ethics. If only that which is true, the logos, the idea, really is, then the reality of immediate experience partakes of the, what is that, Jacob?
Oh, Mahon.
Mahon, of that which is not. And yet, this Mahon is, and for the immediate experience, which is unique reality for the vast majority of men, it is the only reality which is. And for the immediate and for the and for the immediate experience, it is the only reality which is.
Hmm.
The twofold meaning of is would thus express the two-dimensional structure of the world, of the one world.
And we can't have that if we want to live in a one-dimensional society.
Mm,
So we'll just uh we'll just shave off that part of human nature and we'll call it progress. And then the people who like progress won't be able to say, "Hey, don't do that. Please conserve that." Because we're like, "Nah, it's progress. You like progress."
I
Um
just had this, because I'm thinking about what Marcuse is writing here, and like I'm like, why haven't they brought up time? Like it
mhm.
just seems like the thing that's missing, and it's not, you know, there's a reason why he or what he's writing about didn't add it. But then I'm thinking to myself, like logical propositions, like they don't inherently have like time or
Yeah.
temporality, and um I don't know
Well,
what to
that's
think
the
about that.
thing. Ought No, I think you've really hit it on the head, right? A two-dimensional logic has space for ought because ought implies time, and time is a second dimension, whereas is doesn't imply time necessarily. Is can be eternal, is one dimensional. Ought implies that things can change, which is something that a Marxist would definitely want to believe.
Mm,
Because it's not that he's against change, he just wants the shitty change to stop so the
mm,
good change can start. Um, and that is maybe one point in which he disagrees with maybe a classical um conservative like Burke, but maybe would agree with some of the folks in the conservative movement in the West today who would probably say, "Hey, I want the bad stuff to stop so the good stuff can happen." Um, which I don't know is necessarily a bad position for anyone to have. I do think it's a progressive position. Um, but um, you know, it's also, funnily enough, a conservative position because in as much as this dude is a revolutionary Marxist, he's still endlessly arguing for the conservation of certain elements of language and culture and human interactions. And I think you correctly noticed, Alex, fucking time is one of them. Anyway, speaking
mm.
of fucking time, I think you have to go.
Yeah.
So maybe I will shut this down. But I want to say before we stop, ooh, okay. It looks like the No, I think it's still going. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So before we stop, I just wanted to say that this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this. I'm glad we got to do it again. And to everyone who has their health, knock wood, because being healthy is a lot better than being sick. Um, all right, and I'll uh, I'll talk to you guys later on, or I'll sorry, I'll we'll talk to the internet later on. I'll talk to you guys in a second.